a Skype noise.
Skype-a-thon confirmed.
This is a new Skype noise.
It's like lo-fi Skype.
I haven't heard this in like 10 years. Alright.
It's actually a banger, I'm not gonna lie.
Hello?
Whoa, what? I came in at the weird part of this conversation.
Wait, what? Can you give him more volume for me?
All I heard was banger, not gonna lie. And I was like, I'm assuming he's talking about music.
We were talking about the Skype call
sound,
noise.
yeah. I can't believe Ravioli is in our Zeldathon right now.
I wish Ravioli was in Pokemon Sword and Shield so someone could be like, check it out, I evolved my Growlithe. And Ravalli could go, I mean, it's just Arcanine.
Well, thank you, Sean, for taking your time to be with us today. I really appreciate your patience with us. We have so much going
Yes. You almost called me Shiitake, and now I want that to be my name for this interview.
Sean, not Sean, sorry.
No, no!
Well, we're dead.
I just want to get the tower.
All right, I'm gonna take this into
I'm sorry, Sean. I'm sorry.
Dude, for real though, like I got to watch one of my closest friends play Breath of the Wild. Like he's going into it completely blind, has not seen very much of the game even though it came out 2 years ago, which this is gonna make me lose a lot of fans, but I haven't seen a lot of the game outside of bits and pieces from streams because I never really got a chance to sit down and play it. So he's trying to make his way up one of the towers, and it's one of those towers that's like completely covered in thorn bushes.
Yeah.
And I was like, he was like, I don't think I have enough stamina to get past those. And I was like, well, it's probably one of those towers where like, you know, it winds around the tower, but you just have to crawl along the safe spots like you did in the Ocarina of Time game when you were inside the Deku Tree. And then I was like, wait a minute, can you just burn them? And he's like, let me see. And he throws some fire arrows up there, and I'm like, you can. I mean, you could do it either way. You could have just gone around the tower and stopped off at each of the ledges to rebuild your stamina, or you do what he did and you just burn a bunch of the thorns and you climb straight up and get to the top. I was like, this game is nuts. Like, you come up with these dumb ideas and you're like, I wonder if I can do this, and you can, and the game just lets you do that. That's so cool.
That's my favorite part about this iteration of like Legend of Zelda is just that they let me do whatever I want, and a lot of the times, for some reason, it works.
And it's usually
Right,
stupid.
And you've
I got
caught
to
a
see
lot
the
of people
shrine where you're
that they
supposed to
can
navigate the metal ball through the little maze by controlling the controller, but he just flips it upside down so it's the flat side and catapults the ball into the correct space. And it's just like, this is so dumb. It's perfect.
I agree. All right, are you ready for a question, Sean?
No, you pay me.
Let's praise this game more.
Why not? Okay, so
My corporate overlord said I haven't given it enough stars yet. I have to keep talking.
So you voiced Ravalli, Teba, and the Great Deku Tree in this game. So what is one thing you enjoy about each of them?
You know, this is actually a pretty easy answer for me to give because I tell people a lot. They say, what's your favorite role? And I say, well, to be honest, I try to find something from every single one of my roles that I can take home with me, whether it's a new challenge that I overcame, something that I knew I was going to do well that I got to, you know, completely obliterate in a good way, or if it was just a brand new experience. And each of the characters that I played in Breath of the Wild represented one of those three. The Great Deku Tree was the new challenge for me because in order to do the Great Deku Tree's voice, in order to hit that level of baritone, I had to relax as much of my body as possible, because if I was any bit tense, my throat would tighten up and I wouldn't be able to open my passageway wide enough for me to push enough air out to hit that lower range. Teba was the example of the character that I knew what I wanted to do and I nailed it right away, because when they gave me the sample scene to do for Teba, I immediately said, I know exactly what he sounds like in my head. And they said, give us that. And I did. And they said, yep, works for us. So it seems silly to say it that way, but you have to understand, when my entire career is about, you know, looking at character descriptions and pictures and trying to decide what they sound like and then trying to match it up to what the director wants, to immediately have a headcanon for what Teba sounds like and have it be 100% accepted as the final voice without any tweaks whatsoever, that's, I mean, God, in the first voice iteration of a canon Zelda game, no less. So I'm extremely proud that what I came up for with Teba is what was in the finished product. Ravalli was that was it. Ravalli was the challenge that I had to overcome because I came in with an idea of what Ravalli would sound like, and it was good. It just wasn't what Nintendo of America wanted to go in their direction for the character. So I had to start all the way back from square one. And it was very emotionally daunting. I've said in multiple previous interviews that I got so stressed out over whether I'd be able to do the performance for Ravalli that I wanted to give him that I called my mentor during our first break during the session, and I broke down crying over the phone because I was like, I don't want to get recast. I love this character, and he's my favorite. But I mean, yeah, no, for real. But I made it work, and I learned a lot of important lessons about, collaborative efforts in the studio and about myself as an actor. And so that's where Ravalli provided the challenge. And that means Deku Tree was actually the new experience. Deku Tree was, a lot of people don't know this, but originally I was only cast as the Great Deku Tree. He was the only character I had been cast for in the game. Which is weird because out of the three, he's definitely the weakest of my vocal performances, or at least he was the hardest for me to maintain. It was during the process of recording for Deku Tree that I was given the option, or the availability, the opportunity to try out for Ravalli as well. So Deku Tree not only was a new part of my vocal register that I had to experience, but he was also the gateway that allowed me to get to both of the burbs that I love so much.
The burbs. Well, honestly, dude, I think you did a really great job, and it definitely paid off. I can just tell from your story, to be honest. It's insane, dude.
Thank you. I still think it's really funny because within like the first month of the game being out, I remember someone on 4chan saying the Deku Tree sounds like a 25-year-old trying to sound like a 2,500-year-old, and I was like, well, you're not wrong.
If that was from the trailer back during the Game Awards, I think they actually used the clip from Bill Rogers' voice for the King. That's why he doesn't sound as old as the Great Deku Tree.
They did, but I'm positive that they used the Japanese clip of Ravalli lifting off because in the Japanese, he just laughs, and in the English, I actually say a line, and I don't remember standing in front of a microphone going, ha 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 ha, except for, I'm gonna get fired. But yeah, so I'm almost people swear that it was an English laugh, and I don't know. It was so long ago. But I was at the Game Awards! I got to hear myself.
Jeff Keighley got to present you, and that's an honor all of us should experience one day.
Man, he didn't even wear his Dorito crown, though.
I know!
What was the point?
The Mountain Dew Pope did not be crowned.
That's great. All right, so next question. So I'm assuming you've played a Zelda game before, right? And if you have, what's your favorite Zelda game?
The one that defined most of my childhood was definitely Link's Awakening. And of course, as soon as the HD remake came out earlier this year, or a couple months ago, I bought it. I was playing it nonstop. I 100%ed it on hard mode. I did everything. And, saw the bonus scene. Link's Awakening was definitely the game that it's just the one that I spent the most time on by far.
No, I'm sorry. I'm talking to myself. I think it's 4 bananas.
Yeah, four mighty bananas.
4 bananas.
4 mighty bananas.
Yeah.
All right. So before you came to voice your roles in Breath of the Wild, did you take any inspiration from your other roles into your characters for Breath of the Wild?
I think I understood that question. Are you saying whether the voices that I did for Breath of the Wild, were they inspired at all from previous characters?
Like to find the voice for those characters?
Okay.
In any sense?
Deku Tree, no. I actually think Deku Tree and Ravalli were both kind of unique in their own right.
Mm-hmm.
Deku Tree was because I was just trying to focus on creating a voice that was believable enough for the character. Mm-hmm. And since I couldn't go like Rave Mind baritone, I was like, I'm gonna go for breathy and sage wisdom instead of just all the way down into the low range. Ravalli. Case where yes, I came up with something that was a little bit bird-like, and that was my initial impression. But when we ended up having to go in a different direction, I really struggled for a while, and so I just kind of leaned on my director for a fair amount of time until I felt like I had a better grasp of this new version of the character, and then I ran with it from there. So Ravalli and Deku Tree were definitely both their own voices. Teba, on the other hand, Teba was inspired. Are any of you familiar with an animated series called Bedfellows?
I am not.
Okay. So in Bedfellows, there are two characters.
The first one is named Fatigue. He's very high-pitched and very, super gay. I mean, gay is really, really gay.
Anyway, so Fatigue got used as a different character because
He's very high-pitched and British. But there's this character I play called Monotaro. So if I take Fatigue's voice and I take away the British accent, and then I just make him a little more doll-like and robotic, now you have Monotaro from Danganronpa V3.
But the other character in Bedfellows is Sheen. Is this guy. He's like a cat dog, and he's just always mad all the time. I'm so angry. And I was like, what happens? Because I knew Teba was a character who, he wasn't aggressive, he was just doubtful. Because by the time you meet him, his idol who he looks up to has already failed, and he's not sure that this complete random stranger with a penchant for green hats is going to be able to beat the bad guy either. So I was like, what if I took, Sheen's angry disposition and I just made it bitterness instead? And so by taking away the anger and just making it full of doubt and insecurity, or at least insecurity regarding their future, taking that anger away is what allowed me to get the stoicness of Teba. And so Teba was directly inspired by Sheen. I just replaced a lot of that anger with a more subtle form of distrust.
That's really cool.
That's awesome. We've been, by the way,
It's Ravalli.
during that description, we've been in the actual Ravalli memory cutscene. So this has been a bit of a weird Sean dub that we just
God, dubs suck. Go with the sub.
All right, moving on with that.
Oh, I forgot to put on the Switch shirt. What am I doing, Nintendo? Oh.
I'm wearing my Link's Awakening shirt, I just realized. So get with the program, man.
Yeah,
Same.
Seriously.
I'm out of character, man. There we go. There, now you can go buy a Nintendo Switch Lite.
All right,
Okay.
so
Why would I need a Nintendo Switch Lite? The Switch is already backlit.
I know you may be asked this a lot, but like if you want to just sum up briefly, what is like something you really enjoy about voice acting?
Something I enjoy about voice acting in general.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago, I was paid to make the sound a person would make while doing a triple backflip flaming sword strike. That's a phrase that
Are
I
you
can
able to
say
share
now,
that,
okay?
or is it secret?
Or is it NDA?
No, I can't say that. I can't say.
Yeah.
But that's a thing. If I went out and told someone, "Hey, watch me do a triple backflip flaming sword strike," it would end one of two ways: either a visit from the cops or a visit to the paramedics for my broken spinal column. But in a booth, it's just amazing to be like, all right, your character does a triple backflip flaming sword strike in order to break himself out of the spiderweb cocoon that he found himself in after the ice mage successfully froze him in place while the giant arachnid was trying to eat all of his friends. And I was like, all right. It doesn't happen in real life. I get to have all these interesting adventures and all these unique experiences in the booth. I get to play pretend, and I know that seems like a really common answer, but it's just fun. It's fun being able to do all this crazy stuff and say what if, and then get to portray the character doing that. Yeah, that's really what it boils down to. Real life is interesting, but I don't know. If I'm assuming you guys survived 2019, and if you did, then you'll agree with me when I say sometimes I really just don't want to be here.
Agreed. All right, so how about we do a donation question?
All right.
Was that the donation question?
Oh
was
no,
that
it was
the $10
not. It was
right
my
there?
question. It was my question.
I got a few questions queued up here. The first one from Renz. Is it hard to manipulate your voice into Ravalli?
As Ravalli, no. I definitely have an easier time with higher range. This is interesting because I have an easier time with higher range characters because my natural voice, especially when I'm excited or eager, is higher range. But when my throat gets tired out, when it's dealing with wear and tear, or when it's really stressed out because of screaming for a while, the higher range is also the first to go. So I will often tell clients, I'll say, if we're going to do a range of characters, please start with the highest pitch characters first, and then work our way to the lower ones. And it's for multiple reasons. First is because, like I said, it's easier for me to get into voice for a higher pitch. I don't want to risk not being able to do a higher pitch if later on in the session, if my throat is worn down. But also because even if my throat does get worn down, if it's worn down by the time we get to lower range characters, usually lower range characters to some degree need to either sound wispy or aggressive. It's not all the time, but more often than higher range characters, they do tend to be a little bit gruff. And if my throat is worn down, that gruffness comes out naturally, so I don't have to force it. So it kind of does half the work for me in the process. But answering the question specifically, no, Ravalli was not very difficult to stay in the voice once I found it. Finding the voice was a lot more difficult for me. But considering that, I always enjoy playing characters that tend to sound like they would have beaks, it's easier for me to get up into that range for those types of characters.
There's, so before voice acting was a thing in Zelda, people always argued, how do you pronounce this name or this thing or whatever. So what's your take on saying Deku? Have you ever always called it Deku or Deku or whatever?
I pronounce it Daddy.
Okay.
Oh wait, sorry. I thought we were talking about Sidon. My apologies.
You're not wrong.
Well, you were talking about quadruple bananas. I figured we were going to talk about Sidon at some point. Anyway, I always refer to what the Japanese phonetics are. So if we think of the Japanese phonetics, which is a, I, U, E, O, then it would be deku tree. Now the problem is, I thought it was going to be, do you pronounce it Deku tree or Deku tree? And then I was going to say the obvious was Deku tree. But when you get to the nuance between de and Deku tree, at that point, I'm not even sure if it really makes a difference. Because for all I know, I'm hearing A-I-U-E-O, and Japanese are saying, no, it's A-I-U-A-O. So I go Deku tree, as in E-H, D-E-H-K-O-O. But as long as you're not saying Deku or worse, Diku, I'm pretty sure it doesn't matter how you choose to say it. Or Dooku. This tree is not wielding lightsabers. It is not the Great Dooku tree.
I hope not. We're in big trouble otherwise.
MJ Evans, he asks, which file name would you vote for?
Oh.
What are our options?
Left sip, right sip, or center sip?
Yeah, I'm getting the horse right after this, by the way.
Wait. Which what?
What file name would you vote for?
We're naming horses.
Sure.
Oh, I'm too high. Whoops.
Okay.
No!
We're naming a horse in Breath of the Wild, and our options are left sip, right sip, or center sip.
Like sip, S-I-P?
Yeah, as in you're drinking something.
Everybody sip in the chat. Show them.
If you were to drink something right now, would you stay centralized, or would you tilt your head to the right or to the left?
I'd take a sip while doing a triple backflip flaming sword spin.
Triple backflip sip it is.
Okay, I'm thinking. I want my gut is saying center sip because that's how I drink my drinks. However, I'm gonna have to go
Right.
Shh, let me think. Okay.
Peer pressure.
Whether I'm sleeping in bed or sitting on the couch next to my wife, I am always on the left. Always on the left. So, hold on.
Wait.
So it stands to reason that I'm sick of that. I'm going right sip.
Yeah! Right sip, everybody. Part of the empire.
Let's do it.
I didn't mean to be doing Ravalli's whole section while we were doing this interview, but it kind of worked out.
It worked out.
Yeah, we got the thumbs up. Yeah!
Yeah, now that you've already seen the best part of the game, why bother playing more?
Yeah.
So true.
What are you talking about? We didn't go anywhere near Sidon yet.
That's not how you pronounce Urbosa.
She's a woman.
What?
All right, good question. What do you got?
Okay. If somebody wants to get into voice acting, what's the first important thing that they should probably do?
Well, where do you want to focus? Left sip, center sip, or right sip?
Right sips.
Right sips.
Get out of my industry. It's my spot. That's my character. Well, the main thing I've been telling people is I say, first of all, are we assuming that they have had maybe minimal experience, but they're basically starting from square one?
They have a familiar idea what voice acting is, and just need like a direction.
So assuming we have someone starting from the early stages like that, the main thing I've been telling people is I give them 4 links that I suggest they check out. The first is a site called IWantToBeAVoiceActor.com. It's a blog site by D. Bradley Baker. D. Bradley Baker is the most prolific creature voice actor in the business. Like, he is the Mel Blanc of creature voices, and I make no exaggeration out of that. And he writes on his site about every conceivable angle of this industry that you can think of. I guarantee you that there's stuff he's added to that site since the last time I accessed it that I have not read up on yet. So I should probably go back and do further research on his blog site. So I tell people, the same way that, Stephen King, I believe, says you need to read before you can start writing. You need to read before you can start performing or reading script with your voice. Do your research before you put it into practice. So IWantToBeAVoiceActor.com is the first one. The second one is Voice Acting Mastery, which is a podcast and workshop series by Crispin Freeman, who was Winston in Overwatch. He was a bunch of characters in Naruto. He was, I believe, Hellsing? Is that correct? I'm not sure. I could be wrong on that. Anyway, Crispin is also a consistent actor or a consistently working actor in the industry. And I tell people to listen to the podcast because he interviews a whole bunch of different other actors. And I think it's important to get a sense of how many different ways there are for folks to have gotten in the industry, and try to find someone who's either has a story similar to yours that you can pull guidance from, or that you just are inspired by and you're like, I want to try to do that method. In addition, like I said, he does offer online workshops, one-on-ones through Skype or other programs. I used one of those online workshops once in order to get feedback on auditions I did for Sword Art Online, which, as you may be aware of, is part of what led to me being cast as Diabel, which was my first broadcast anime role. But now we have Guido Mista! Anyway. Third link, I tell people look into voiceovervoiceactor.com, which is a website, warm-up site, and book by Yuri Lowenthal and Tara Platt. Yuri Lowenthal recently voiced Spider-Man in the newest Spider-Man PS4 game, which means he is definitely working in the industry in recent titles. And then lastly, I always recommend the Voice Acting Club for a couple reasons. One is the Voice Acting Club is currently the most comprehensive website for both amateur and professional established voice actors who want to get involved in stuff online. I know that there's Casting Call Club and a couple other sites, but when we're talking like original projects, both paid and I'm trying to think, passion or personal projects, there's a wide variety of available projects in the Voice Acting Club. And many of the people who 10 years ago were the amateurs just trying to network with each other and get practice in are now the established professionals who also help moderate the site. Kira Buckland, Kimlin Tran, Devin Mack, myself, we're all moderators on the site at this point. It's also because there are projects that get cast there that either I have helped put cast lists together for, or I have directed to the Voice Acting Club, and that's where they got their cast. For example, there was a foreign client from China who met a bunch of people through Voice Acting Club, and Yokai Kitchen, which is a mobile game, a bunch of us got cast in that through working through that client. Freedom Planet was cast through the Voice Acting Club, and now Freedom Planet 2 was done at Texas Studios, but it did start on Voice Acting Club. I've helped with projects like Kimono Mahjong or Winds of Change, both of which were released within this year. So once you've done all that research and you're ready to start practicing, start networking, start getting feedback, I really, really recommend getting to know people through the Voice Acting Club, because many of those same folks are going to be your colleagues in the future. And I'm saying this as a massive introvert. You gotta have connections. You do. You have to. Word of mouth referral goes a long way in this industry, both good and bad.
First, from Taito, what do you honestly think of the Ravalli character?
I really wish I had known what I learned when doing the DLC scenes before I did the original scenes, because that played a big part in my understanding of the character. When I mentioned that we had to start back from square one with Ravalli, that's because when I came in, the type of cockiness I was trying to give him, there's two major focuses when it comes to a self-confident character. There's confident cocky because you are trying to convince everyone that you are the best, and there's cocky confident because you really have earned the right to be that confident, and you're exhibiting that. And I came in with that first design. He's trying to get everyone else around him to believe he is the best, which is kind of the angle that they went with the Japanese performance. But Nintendo of America, now rightfully, now that I understand, wanted to go for that more nuanced. No, he literally sequestered himself in the mountains and didn't even want anyone watching him attempt to do this special power until he had mastered it and could show it off at its full capacity. And that helped me gain such a deep respect for the character because he wasn't doing it to show off. He didn't even want anyone to see it until he was completely finished with mastering it. And to go through all of that work to make sure that you were good enough for what was being asked of you, only to have a complete random stranger with no prior accolades come in and be placed as your superior in a life or death mission, I completely understand now why he was not on board with just instantly rallying behind this guy. It made so much sense, but I didn't have that knowledge when I did the original game performance for Ravalli, but I learned it when I did the DLC. So, I mean, I'm glad I know it now, and if he happens to come back for Breath of the Wild 2, and I'm telling you right now, I don't know any more than anybody else, so this is not like, ooh, it's his secret message, we have to decipher it. Oh, shit, I don't know anything. All right, so, but yeah, now I understand his mentality. I understand why he reacted the way that he did. I do think that once he got to know Link, there is that little bit of, okay, well, as long as I'm going to be forced to work with him, I'm going to make this fun for myself. So maybe there is a little bit of that cocky confident where he is showing off to Link because he's not 100% keen on the guy for understandable reasons, but his heart is in the right place, and the DLC really helps drive that point home.
Next from Nerd Gecko, what got you into voice acting / announcing?
So the fun thing is, before I even understood what voice acting was in the first place, I was already doing it. Because when my brother and I would play games like Bomberman 64, The Second Attack, you know, the old N64 era, where games had text but no actual voiceover, we would take turns just coming up with voices for the characters. And it's weird for me to describe it now, but you have to understand, I mentally was not processing that what I was doing for these video games was the same as what people were doing for cartoons that I was watching, that there were actual people providing the voices for these characters. What sparked that light bulb for me was when I saw a behind-the-scenes clip of a recording session being done for Trinity Blood, and I saw Troy Baker, you know, back when Troy Baker was doing anime for his income. I saw Troy Baker in the studio, and it was a 2-angle shot where I could see him in the booth and I could see the screen with the character that he was dubbing. And so when they did the beeps and he starts saying his line, and I saw him talking at the same time the character's lip flaps were moving, that's when it all came together for me, and I realized, oh, this is a thing. People are talking and they become these characters. This is, I don't know what this is, but I feel like I want to be a part of this. And at that time, that's really all it was. It was just this attachment, this instant cling that I felt to whatever I was witnessing that I wanted to know more about. And so I followed it and I pursued it, and it's just kind of developed from there. I tell a lot of people I'm very, very grateful for voiceover working out for me, because I don't do a whole lot outside of it. So voice acting just kind of caught me by surprise and swept me off my feet, and Stockholm Syndrome keeps me in.
I feel that, man. I feel that.
Two more.
All right, two more.
Next, from Super MC Gamer. In your opinion, does Link love Sidon?
Well, I'm an anime dub actor, so my opinion doesn't count for crap. But does Link love Sidon? Oh man.
Hello?
Are we talking platonic love or romantic love?
Romantic, very, very important romantic. Thank you.
Like hamster eating the banana love?
Correct. Continue.
You okay over there?
I'm trying to get Ravioli's Gale first.
I use his gale to cool down the ravioli before I eat it.
Oh,
It's
I'm
too
so
hot
glad.
out.
I'm so glad.
In my opinion, I believe that Link has some level of feelings for someone who is, 1, that confident, 2, that optimistic, and 3, that supportive of him. Because, let's be honest, like, have you not felt at least a little bit of attachment to someone who is just unconditionally praising and loving of you? Like, maybe not if it's not in a fully romantic sort of way, but you do want to spend more time with those people. So I can absolutely see that Link, after dealing with the pressure from the champions and from the rejection from Ravalli, and just the knowledge that they failed once already, to have that kind of trust and support and love from a character like Sidon, it would be crazy to think that there wouldn't be some reciprocation, even if it wasn't deliberate and straightforward. So I do think there is some love there for Sidon. Absolutely platonic, maybe romantic, but I don't think it reaches a level where he gives much thought to it outside of all the other duties that he's responsible for. And I think that's kind of where it's left on a cliffhanger moment, is because that's just where that's where the facts are. I'm sure we would love to see more of that develop, but we can't because that's not what he's there for.
Good answer. Good answer. Good answer.
So I guess we'll take that as a yes.
All right. Last quick question.
Last question from donations.
Okay.
Cheesecake asks, if you could go back in time and voice act any character from an anime in the past or present, which character would it be?
You're not going to like this answer, but I have been asked that before, and what I tell people is I wouldn't, because for me, and I'm not saying this goes for all actors, but for me specifically, that mentality of I wish I could go back and voice this character teeters on the edge of being defeatist and green-eyed. You know, there's cases where I know for a fact that Trials of Mana is probably due out soon, and I haven't heard anything about auditions for that. You know, I was excited about, I wonder all the time, you know, since they're remaking the Mana series, you know, what if they do Legend of Mana? That game was a huge part of my childhood. I would love to voice for it. But if I don't, then I'm going to have to just deal with that. A perfect example is the Etrian Odyssey series. Anyone who knows about my love of dungeon crawlers knows that I am absolutely crazy about Etrian Odyssey. There is very little I wouldn't have done to just get audition sides for the Etrian games when they did the dubs for the remakes of Millennium Girl and the Fafnir Knight. But for various reasons, some of which I'm aware of, some of which I'm just theorizing about, I never got the chance to read for any of those Etrian Odyssey dubs. So, you know, if I were to answer that, I'd say, oh, I wish I could go back and voice one of these Etrian Odyssey characters. But then it leads to a whole range of emotions, whether it's sadness that I didn't get to be a part of that, or bitterness that I wasn't given the chance. And I would rather spend that energy looking forward, facing forward, looking at the roles that I have had the chance to play, looking at the opportunities that I've been given that I can't even talk about with people yet. And every time that I think about the stuff that I've accomplished so far, I tell myself, God, imagine what might happen for you within the next 5 years. Because when I moved out to California in 2012, I didn't know about Breath of the Wild. Nobody knew about Breath of the Wild being in development. I don't even know if they'd started development on Breath of the Wild by 2012. But here we are 7 years later, and 5 years after I moved out to California, I was on a day one Switch release that became one of the top 10 games of all time. And that's the kind of thoughts that I want to have in my head when I think about my career and I think about the roles that I want to play and the stuff that I'm looking forward to. If there's a type of role that I want to play, then the best thing I can do is spend today and spend the future doing my research and practicing so that the next time a role of that type shows up and I'm given a chance to read for it, I have the best chance possible of booking the gig.
Unless you're under your NDA or whatever, can you share your thoughts or impressions about Breath of the Wild 2?
I am very surprised that people think any of my characters are going to come back for Breath of the Wild 2. One, because they're dead, or Teva, and two, because they're a bird. And I don't know if you know this, but birds don't come from underground. It's not a place where they live. However, I would say if there's a... How many of you here have played Dragon Quest XI?
I know people who have, but not me.
Okay. So in Dragon Quest XI, there's elements of the story that you learn by making contact with parts of the world tree, like basically literal pieces of its roots. Now, I think it could be possible that if Zelda and Link are deep underground and the Great Deku Tree has roots that extend that far underground, maybe there's a way that he can communicate with them through those roots. I think that would be pretty cool. But I'm going to state up front, I have no expectations whatsoever about any of my current characters returning. I think it is more likely, if anything, that I would be given the chance to audition for new characters than have characters I voiced return. Now, off of that subject, I have told people, because so much of the game in the first game was based on this incredibly expansive overworld where you could go anywhere and it was completely open to you. For Breath of the Wild 2, I want to feel claustrophobic. I immediately think of Metroid 2, where the deeper you went, the darker, the more empty the space became. And I don't mean empty in terms of wide open. I mean empty in terms of you are alone except for you and the things trying to kill you. And eventually the music just stopped playing. It became more static, more jittered, until there was nothing except the sounds of the Metroids playing at all. I want to feel like the deeper that they get underground, the closer they get to the source of the evil energy that we saw in the trailers, the more removed they become from everybody else who's above ground in the meantime. The more it becomes obvious that it's just them and nobody else. Because that would be terrifying in the best sort of way. The other thing I'd like to see is one of the big twists of the original Etrian Odyssey game, because you're trying to get to the heart of the world tree in Etrian Odyssey in order to stop a calamity from happening that would destroy civilization as you know it. And when you get to the second to last layer of the labyrinth, you go down, 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 deeper, 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 you realize that the second to last layer is actually the ruins of the previous civilization that did die to the cataclysm 1,000 years ago. So since the first game had all of the stuff involving, you know, the Sheikah clan, their technology, you know, their tribes and everything like that, I would love to see if at some point, like halfway through the game or as one of the big twists, if Link and Zelda end up coming into, think of like when you're in Minecraft and you manage to finally break into a giant cavern system. Imagine that, but it's the ruins of the old Sheikah tribe, of the old Sheikah civilization. Even better, what if everything that was left behind didn't necessarily stop working?
Huh. That's really cool. That's some good theories right there.
Really?
I like that a lot.
From all that you gathered from the trailer, which is insane.
My job's to think about Zelda, and I hadn't to think about anything like that. Dang, you're good. You want to run this event? Come on over.
that's my as a player, as a gamer,
yes.
My big hope is that Breath of the Wild 2 will be the inverse of what Breath of the Wild 1 was, and where Breath of the Wild 1 was this wide open, expansive world where you had the freedom to go everywhere. I want Breath of the Wild 2 to feel very constricted, very scary, and like each new bit of progress isn't so much progress as, hey, you're slightly less likely to die, which means now we're going to throw stronger stuff at you.
Anybody else have a question for Sean?
I have a quick question.
What's up?
Ravalli just gave me an orb of green.
Congrats.
So, my question. Ravalli?
He's telling you don't have the balls to do it yourself.
Yeah.
I didn't get enough balls yet. I didn't go to many shrines. Donate $20 so I can go more shrines.
Ravalli
need more
or
balls.
ravioli?
I call him ravioli.
Yes, my question for Sean is Ravalli or ravioli?
No, don't do this to him. He's gonna get in trouble with Dougie. We don't want him to get in trouble with Dougie, okay? He has to obviously say Ravalli. I can say ravioli.
Jimmy Neutron. Ravalli or ravioli? No, there was a third name that I always called him, and I can't.
Wait, did you call him ravioli too?
I feel like Plankton. I don't know. Didn't think I'd get this far. Ravalli in the game, ravioli on my shitpost Tumblr.
Fair enough.
So I'm not sure if you know any of the Critical Role actors or if you actually know what Critical Role is, but I was actually kind of wondering if you had the chance to play D&D as a character, like what kind of voice would you give to that character?
Well, here's the ironic thing. I'd probably play a Kenku. So they don't talk on their own. They only mimic everything else around them, and that's how they learn languages. I did an interview where they helped me design a D&D character that I would play. And I knew that the two things I really enjoyed were acrobatic snipers and definitely my love for animals. So we ended up coming up with a Kenku druid because the idea was that he would be wearing the main thing that I remember is that as a druid, he definitely wanted to befriend animals and take care of them, possibly have them fight on his behalf, but he didn't like having animals fight for him because then that risks them getting hurt or killed in the line of doing his bidding. And so one of his big developments is that he wears this really garish looking fur coat that it's just patches. It's patches of different fur. And the reason that you learn over time is that it's actually a fur coat made out of remains from all of the animals that have lost their lives fighting on his side, because he basically, once they've lost their life, he takes a part of their coat and he sews it onto the coat or that he's wearing. So there's white fur from a rabbit or brown fur from a bear. And so that's his way of reminding himself not only of the help that he's gotten along the way, but as a constant reminder of the lives that he is forced to sacrifice in order to keep himself alive.
So this isn't really a voice acting question. Can I ask to hear your opinion of Grovile from PMD live on stream?
What do you ask? You want my opinion on Grovile from Pokemon Mystery Dungeon?
How do you feel about Grovile?
I feel like a hamster in front of a bushel of bananas.
All right, I think we have one more question. We got to make it quick here.
Okay, go.
Is Link hot?
In or out of the desert garb?
Oh, I don't have that. I can't model it.
Okay, well, outside of the Gerudo garb, yes. Inside of the Gerudo garb, yes.
Okay, I think we're good.
I think we're all done now. Sean, thank you so much for coming to talk to us today. I really appreciate you, man. You're really great.
Yeah. Thanks for making the time for me.
No problem. Thank you for also being here as well. All right. Well, we're all good, and we're all good. I'm gonna leave because I've been here for too long.
Thank you very much, Sean. Have a great
Bye,
night.
Sean. Thank you for being here.
Guys, we're still not at $30,000 for St. Jude. Please don't hold. No, hey.